The north wind sang like a string pulled too tight. The lighthouse at Dirholae stood against it, a tall and weathered beast with a skin of moss and salt. Beyond its base, the black basalt cliffs and the ocean met in a constant drumbeat. Waves struck the rock with a sound that was not only water. Sometimes it was like a whisper, sometimes like a cry that the wind stole halfway. Elin pulled her wool coat tight around her shoulders. The smell of lamp oil and sea salt mixed with the scent of mint tea she had just poured. She had learned the language of this place, the long sigh of the wooden door, the cough of the chimney, the hinge that groaned whenever the wind turned. They were the sounds that had replaced city noise and made up her nights. In their way, they were company. This was not the life she had imagined. 6 months earlier, she had left Reykjavik, a small apartment, a half-finished painting, and a name she no longer spoke. She had come to the edge of the coast to mend what had cracked inside her. At the lighthouse, she learned how to read the wind. For trouble, change the oil, keep the glass clean, log the weather, and send a signal in fog too thick for the human eye. She learned how to be silent, the way some people learn a second language. That night, the storm had been growing since dusk, turning the rain into tight cords that slapped the windows. The town of Vik, hidden behind the cliffs, had gone dark hours ago. Out here, the only light was the golden beam of the lamp sweeping the black air in slow and steady arcs. Near midnight, she heard the knock. 3 times, hesitant. In Dirholae, during a storm, no one knocked. Fishermen came in through the back if they had to, and the weather station called over the radio. 3 knocks in this weather felt like something pulled from a well. Elin set her tea down and picked up the metal hook she kept by the door. "Who is it?" she called. A pause. Then a low voice in Icelandic, smooth and even like a stone worn by water. "I ask for shelter from the storm." She hesitated. No fishing boat had docked nearby. She pulled open the small peephole. Outside stood a man soaked to the bone, his long coat dripping. But it was not the coat or the dark hair plastered to his forehead that made her pause. It was his eyes. In the flash of lightning, she saw a faint light in them, a soft green glow like the cold shine of deep-sea plants. Elin unlocked the door. The wind rushed in with the sharp scent of salt. The man stepped inside quickly and bowed his head in thanks, a bow too fluid to belong to a man raised on land. She shut the door and slid the bolt. "Did you get lost?" she asked. "I was looking for the light," the man said. His breath came out in white clouds. "And the keeper of it." "You have found both," she said, pointing to a chair by the stove. "Hang your coat there. There is tea." He shrugged off the wet coat. His shoulders were lean and strong, water running from his hair to his jaw and onto the old wood floor. When she handed him a wool towel, his fingers brushed hers. His skin was so cold that it made her catch her breath. Not the cold of rain, but the cold of something that had come up from under ice. After a few sips of tea, some color returned to his face, but his eyes still held that steady green light. He looked around the room, the maps of the coastline pinned to the wall, the weather logs, the old black and white photographs of keepers from years past. In one photo, a young man stood before the lighthouse, smiling sideways at the camera hair blown by the wind. Her father. The stranger stopped at that photo. The man said softly. "He was here." Elin stiffened. "He was the keeper. He has been gone a long time." "I know," the man said, looking down. "He saved a friend of mine." Another shiver touched her, and not from the cold. "Who are you?" she asked. The man waited a moment, as though weighing a choice, then said, "My name is Ari." His eyes caught the lamp's light, and for a moment the green burned brighter. "I do not belong to the land." Even people in the city knew the old stories of the hidden folk. But in Iceland, the line between leaving and telling was like the line between shore and tide. You could stand close, but you did not mock the water. Elin had grown up with her aunt's tales by the fire. She believed in them the way one believes in good manners. Respect the old stones, leave ancient trees alone, do not disturb what might belong to someone else. But looking into Ari's eyes, she understood that some beliefs did not need to be declared. "You are one of the sea kind," she asked before she could stop herself. Ari nodded. "I was exiled." "For what reason?" "For keeping a promise, and for refusing to forget it." Ari told her about the world beneath the cliffs, the columns of basalt like the pipes of a cathedral, the narrow passages glittering like fish scales, the market stalls where fog was sold by the jar and wind was traded for songs. His people guarded the border between sea and shore. They kept the fish to their old paths, the winter ice to its old cracks. "Your lighthouse was one of the marks we honored," Ari said, looking toward the lamp's golden sweep. "It was part of the song we followed to keep the sea in rhythm." "And now?" Elin asked. "Now there are other songs. New lights, new noises, and shadows waking that should have stayed sleeping." Elin remembered the reports. Dead fish washing up with black stains on their scales, seals stranded on beaches, children in Vik, whispering of something walking the shore without leaving tracks. "What kind of shadows?" she asked. Ari placed his hand on the cold glass of the lamp-room window. "We call it the Mother of Shadows. It has no shape of its own. It likes to borrow the shapes of those we have lost. It feeds on fear and on the gaps left when people disappear without saying goodbye." Something in those words brushed against a tender place inside Elin. "It wants the light," Ari continued. "Not to wreck ships. There are none out tonight. It wants to break the rhythm. If the light goes out, the stones shift. Not on your maps, but on ours. The fish lose their way. The seasons change, and storms learn new songs." "You expect me to believe this," Elin said. "You can believe or not," Ari replied. "But the storm believes me." The next sweep of the lamp painted Ari's face gold for a second, and in that second his eyes flared green like deep ice under northern lights. "And there is one more thing," he said. "Your father made a promise. He told me that if the shadows ever came back, I should find the keeper who bears his name." Elin's throat tightened. "When did he tell you that?" "Before my exile," Ari said. The wind shifted like an invisible hand had turned a wheel. The lighthouse groaned and a fine crack in the glass trembled. The light flickered once as if tired. Elin ran up the spiral stairs to the lamp room, Ari following close. His steps made almost no sound on the iron. Rain struck the glass in hard bursts, and a crust of ice clung to the metal hinges. She checked the backup generator, the oil, the relays. Everything read normal, yet the beam still shivered. "Something is eating into the rhythm," Ari said. He pressed his palm to the glass. Drops of water on his skin seemed to slide upward as if pulled. He closed his eyes. "It is below us." The radio crackled. "Vik weather station here. Winds have jumped again. You holding steady up there?" "Steady enough," Elin replied. "Light is flickering, but I am watching it. Probably the damp." "Watch yourself. This storm. It is strange. Pressure is shifting off the charts. Look out for anything unusual in the waves." Elin glanced at Ari. He was staring at the sea, his eyes pale and bright, making the darkness outside seem even deeper. She turned off the radio. "We need to anchor the rhythm," Ari said. "Do you have something of your father's?" Her hand went to the small wooden box in the drawer under the control panel. She had not planned to bring it from Reykjavik, but at the last moment had packed it without thinking. She opened it. Inside lay a small brass whistle, the metal worn and dark. Her father had used it to call her home from the beach when she was a child. She remembered its sound as a thread of home running through the wind. "This?" she asked. Ari's breath caught. "Your father called it the huljom, a piece of the song that keeps the rhythm. It knows how to speak to the water." "Can you play it?" "You can," Ari said, "but you must follow me." "I never played it right." "The rhythm is not in your lips," he said. "It is in believing the sound knows where to go." Elin put the whistle to her mouth. The brass tasted of salt and years. Ari began to hum, low and even like wind through a stone arch. She blew along with him. At first her notes stumbled, but then a memory rose, being 9 years old, running on wet sand, her father at the doorway. The whistle at his lips, the sunset in his hair. The sound in her memory and the sound in the tower joined. The light steadied. Its golden sweep grew smooth again. Outside, a thin screech rose from the dark. Not wind, not wave. Something else. Ari opened his eyes. "Good," he said, and for the first time his smile held a touch of warmth. "But it will try again." They took turns watching the light. Downstairs, Elin checked the oil and the backup power. Ari walked the narrow circular hallway, like a fisherman checking his nets, listening to the wood and stone as if the walls spoke in code. Sometimes he pressed his ear to the floor and whispered short words in a language she did not know. Each time he did, the beam seemed to grow smoother. Around 3 in the morning, the hour when bodies are most tired, when the mind drifts, Elin saw movement at the edge of the lamp room window. It was not the shadow of a cloud. There were no trees here to cast shapes. It was a strip of darkness, darker than the night itself, sliding across the glass and stopping. The temperature in the room dropped at once, as if someone had opened the door to a freezer. "Elin," Ari called from halfway up the stairs, his voice low and urgent. "Do not look straight at it." But she already had. Within that strip of black, she saw the outline of a man's face. Not clear, more like a sketch in smoke, the curve of a brow, a nose, the shadow of a mouth. And in the mouth was the ghost of a crooked smile she knew. Her father's. "Papa," she breathed. The shadow smiled wider, too wide. The lamp's light swept past, and it drew closer to the glass. A thin crack appeared across the pane. The tapping that followed was not like rain. It was like nails scratching. "Elin!" Ari's voice was closer now, firm. His cold hand gripped her arm. "That is not him." She clenched her jaw. "I know," she whispered, "but it knows his face." "Because it lives between memory and forgetting," Ari said. "Do not feed it." "Feed it what?" "Your memory. It is hungry." She shut her eyes and stepped back. Ari moved between her and the glass, his lean frame blocking the shape outside. Elin opened the wooden box, took out the whistle. "Follow me," Ari said. "This time think of the rhythm, not of remembering or losing." She blew. The first notes came easily now, the melody meeting Ari's voice like two ropes twisting together. Outside, the black shape recoiled. Its sound changed from tapping to a sharp, pained hiss. Then it slid away across the glass and down into the cliffs below. The air warmed by a small degree. The beam swept the night again, strong and gold. "It will remember your name now," Ari said quietly. "That will make it hungrier." "Is that good news?" "For something like this, hunger makes it careless," he answered. "That is when we can bind it." With what rope? With a promise, Ari said. The same way your father did. Elin kept her hand on the whistle. What did my father promise? Ari's gaze stayed on the sea where the storm rolled in long, uneven breaths. He promised that someone would always keep the light, no matter the storm. And if the shadows ever came to claim it, that person would open the door to me. To you, she asked. To someone like me, he said. An exile. Elin studied his face. Why were you really exiled? Water clung to his dark hair, sliding down in cold drops. Because I kept to the old markers. I sang the old songs. I refused to move the stones when the council wanted to open paths for new trade. What kind of trade? Markets that deal in light out of tune, selling storms for fire. He looked back at her. You do not need to believe all of that. You only need to know this. If the light goes out before dawn, the map of this coast will change for both your world and mine. She nodded slowly. Then what is the plan? We hold the rhythm until the sun touches the water, Ari said. When that happens, the shadow's strength fades. But before then it will strike hard. Once more and with all it has. When, Ari tilted his head, listening to something she could not hear. His eyes flared green for a heartbeat. When the gold of the light begins to turn silver, that is when people relax, thinking the night is over. By 4:30, the storm seemed to grow tired. The wind eased, the rain softened to a hiss. Elin poured more tea for both of them. They did not speak about Reykjavik or the past. Instead, they spoke about sound. Ari told her how a low note could calm the water, how names that were never spoken could stop a thing from finding you. He described a harp strung with the hair of a whale long dead, played only on nights without a moon to call the youngest fish back to their mothers. Elin told him how she used to paint, and how she believed that blue had endless shades enough to fill a whole canvas without any other color. If you lived under the sea, Ari said, you would see that blue has no borders. On land it has none either, Elin replied. We just give it names to calm ourselves. And to know when we are lost, Ari said. They both smiled quietly. At 4:50, the beam still swept strong and gold. Elin felt the whole lighthouse breathing with them. Then without warning, the world went silent. The wind stopped. The rain stopped. Even the sea seemed to hold its breath. The silence was heavy, pressing against her ears. She could hear her own heartbeat and the slow drip of water from the roof into a tin pail in the kitchen below. Ari's voice came soft but clear. It is here. The beam shifted. Gold dulled to pale yellow, then to a gray-green, then to a purple-black, as if someone had poured ink into the lamp. The dials shook. The glass groaned. The whistle, Ari said. She was already holding it. She blew, but the sound came out thin, broken. Ari's hum cracked too, like a rope under too much strain. Something was on the glass. It was no longer a thin strip of darkness. It swelled, pressing against all sides of the lamp room, a breathing skin of shadow. Faces moved within it like shells in the tide. Her aunt, an old friend, the man she had left in Reykjavik, and her father again, all looking at her with mouths moving in words she somehow understood, without sound. Open the door, they mouthed. Rest. We will take your place. Her knees weakened. Ari's cold hand steadied her. Rhythm, he said sharply. Do not dress it in memory, just rhythm. Elin shut her eyes. She thought of nothing human, nothing with a face. She thought of the beam sweeping the cliffs, steady, steady, as her father had taught her to count the steps up the spiral stairs. 1, 2, 3, 7, 13. She blew. This time the note was clean. Ari caught it, drew it out, bound it to another note. The sound was like stones rolling in a shallow stream. The shadow screamed. It was not a sound in the ears, but in the bones and the palms of the hands. A fresh crack raced across the glass, but it held. The beam brightened back toward gold. The wind roared in again. The sea exhaled. Elin sagged against the wall, breathless. Ari's shoulders lifted and fell in a shudder. "Is it over?" she asked. "Not yet," he said. "But next time it will have to use its real name." The first pale gray of dawn touched the far edge of the sea. It was not sunlight yet, just a change in the shade of the clouds. Elin knew this was the moment Ari had warned her about. The dangerous time when night seemed over, but was not. They stood in the lamp room together. The beam swept gold across the water, but there was a tightness in the air, a pressure that made the glass hum. "It will come again," Ari said, eyes on the horizon. "This time it will speak its name. When it does, do not repeat it." "Why not?" "If you speak it, you invite it in. If I speak it, I can bind it." Elin nodded, gripping the whistle so hard her fingers ached. The gray deepened to silver. The hum in the glass rose to a trembling pitch. Then the shadow rose from the cliffs, taller than the lighthouse, folding and unfolding like black water in windless air. It pressed against the glass, filling the view with nothing but itself. And then it spoke. The voice was many voices layered, high, low, human, inhuman, all saying the same word. The sound made Elin's stomach knot and her vision blur. She bit her tongue to stop herself from saying it back. Ari's voice cut through, sharp and steady, repeating the name in his own tongue, twisting it into another shape. The whistle flew to Elin's lips, and she blew a single long note. Ari's words wove around it, binding the sound like rope around a post. The shadow shrank, writhing against the glass. Cracks spread, but still the pains held. The thing's voices rose to a desperate wail. Ari stepped closer to the window, still speaking, his breath clouding the glass. "Promise," he said to it. "You will not cross this mark again." The shadow's form flickered, faces fading in and out, until finally there was only a formless, black smear. It pulsed once, twice, and then it was gone, slipping down into the cliffs and out of sight. The pressure in the air eased. The glass stopped humming. Outside, the first line of sunlight touched the water. Ari turned to Elin, his face pale, his voice low. "It is bound. For now." The sun climbed slowly over the horizon, turning the silver sea into shifting bands of gold. The wind lost its sharp edge, carrying only the smell of salt and kelp. The lighthouse stood steady, its beam still sweeping, but softer now in the daylight. Elin leaned against the wall, the whistle hanging from her fingers. Her arms felt heavy, her knees unsteady, as if the night had taken more than hours from her. "How long will the binding last?" she asked. Ari stepped away from the window, the green in his eyes dimmed to a faint glow. "A season, maybe 2. The Mother of Shadows keeps no promises it is not forced to keep, and promises fade when no one remembers to hold them. So someone has to keep the light," Elin said. "Always," Ari replied. "It does not have to be you forever. But for now, yes." They stood in silence for a moment. Below them the waves broke in slow, even breaths against the black stone. In the distance, the town of Vik was waking roofs catching the first light. "You said you were exiled," Elin said. "What happens to an exile when the promise is kept?" Ari smiled faintly, but there was no joy in it. "Nothing changes. The council will not call me back." I chose the old ways, and they will not forgive that. My place is between the worlds now, where your father stood. Elin met his eyes. Then you will stay here. For a while, he said, until the next shadow tries. After that, I will go where the light needs me. She nodded. She did not say that she hoped he would stay longer. Instead, she placed the whistle back into the wooden box and shut the lid. I will keep it close, she said. Good, Ari replied. It knows the way back to the water. The morning sun broke free of the clouds, spilling bright gold over the cliff and the lighthouse. The storm was already a memory, but the weight of the night still lay between them, a quiet understanding that no one else in Vik would ever share. Ari glanced once more at the horizon. You kept the rhythm, he said. Your father would have been proud. Elin looked out over the sea. The light swept across it, steady and true. Then I will keep it again, she said. And as the wind shifted toward the shore, carrying the sound of distant waves, she thought she could hear a note within it, the faint echo of a whistle answering from somewhere far below the cliffs.